Yeah, here we are once again. Another week, another live stream. So, I don't know if you guys can hear me. If you're new here, tuning in, we're here every week, Sunday at 11:30 California time. I'm gonna open up a comment that I still haven't gotten to. See if we can address this here at the start of this stream. Comments. Okay. So this was from Haiyan. If I can find it in here, there it is. Alrighty, pull this over here. So, several questions about linking. And we'll go through these one at a time. I'll also try to cut this out if the audio is good enough for an individual lesson. YouTube won't let me paste all that. Okay. So the first one, this person is asking, so Z ending the first word and should be sh, yeah. Sh beginning the next word. If you don't know that symbol, it's IPA. I recommend you ignore it. It doesn't matter, but can be pronounced one of the two following ways. Normal IPA, which would be cheese shop. So, or assimilation of z plus sh would equal j. So cheese shop would become, God, this is so horrible with the IPA, would become cheese shop. And where's she would become where's she. Nah. I've seen this rule before. It's definitely not something that you have to do. If you try to say cheese shop, you're going to sound ridiculous. That's not English. Cheese shop. Let me double check that IPA symbol. I'm pretty sure it's the j sound. But let's see, because that sounds absolutely horrible. Yeah. Oh my God, I need. Okay. Why is it so awful? Je. Okay, sh and je. Yeah. So I was right on that. No. English with Little Sarah. Hello, how are you? Oh, good. Welcome. How are you? Hope you're fine. Let me know if you have any questions. Just trying to answer a comment, very long comment from somebody in another video. Okay, so this first one, don't do that. Don't change z sh into j. That's not gonna work. Maybe in very, very lazy fast speech, but no, that sounds awful to me. Number two, this is such a nuisance to go through. Okay, Z ending first word and Y beginning next word. I'm not going to paste it because I'll paste this short version instead of the whole thing. So this is the second question for linking. So can we assimilate this as je again? So if you say where's your, it become where's your. That one sounds a bit better. It is yellow. It is yellow. Not so good. I would ignore that as well. Can it happen? Possibly. I would ignore it. Number three. Okay, so S ending first word and sh beginning next word. So for example, nice shoes. Basically the assimilation would be that the S drops, so it'd be nice shoes. Instead of nice shoes, nice shoes. This one does work. Yes, you can just drop the S. Phone, I'm not talking to you. So this does work. If you're saying nice shoes, you don't have to say the S, right? Basically you can drop the S. It becomes an SH. Nice shoes, nice shoes. We might lengthen it a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, question is praise has a plural form. So does praise have a plural form? Yeah, praises. Praises. In fact, we have a set phrase to sing someone's praises. That would be the very generic form of that, but you could say like he sang my praises or something like that. It's a little bit of a dated expression. Hello, Abdullah. But yeah, praises does exist. We don't tend to use praises in the plural. It tends to be used singular. But okay, so next one, back to, we have 3 more linking questions here with quote unquote assimilation. So if you end a word with sh and the next word starts with y, that you could assimilate it as sh. So basically drop the y. So if we say brush your, you could say, according to this, brush your. See, brusher. Not quite. There's a problem with this one. Is there another example here? No. Okay, so potentially maybe, but see, if I say brush your, now it's going to sound most natural if I reduce your to your. So I'll go ahead and do that. If I say, but either way, if I say, let's say I don't reduce your, brush your. So I brush your hair, brush your hair. If I say brush and then your, I reduce your to your, brush her hair. Now it sounds like brush her. Okay. Something like this, maybe this is just a bad example. Something like this maybe can sort of exist, but I would not, maybe in really fast or lazy speech, possibly, I would not do this. It's just going to make you harder to understand. Keep in mind, you don't have to say brush, like brush your, as like where it's super nice and clear. You can say brush your. So where you're sort of saying sh, almost like if we have like saying the word onion, onion. Two ways to pronounce that, but one way is you go into the N and then you do nya, right? Or you do that Y sound. So it's like that, but instead of with an N, it's with an SH. Sh, brush your. I would very strongly not recommend trying to collapse that into just a sh sound. Number 5, S ending first word and y beginning next word. Thanks, sir. I have some important job that I need you to get answer, but for now I have to go. Okay. Well, thanks for stopping by. Stop by again if you can and ask more questions. That's fine. Okay, so S ending first word, y beginning the next word. The example here is bless and you. So can we turn and it would become an SH. So can we change bless you into bless you? Yes, possible. Bless you. Or if we say pass your something, pass your test. This is one that when I first heard about this rule, I was really surprised. I was like, why would anybody speak that way? but I have since noticed it. I don't know if I ever use it. I might just not realize it. It's definitely, again, not something that you have to use. You could just do the S and the Y. Pass your, bless you, bless you. There's no problem with that. Can it blend into an SH? Bless you, pasture? Possibly, yes, but I don't recommend it. Maybe if you're speaking very lazily or very quickly to make it a little easier, possibly, but I would not recommend it. Okay, next, I think this is the last one. TS ending first word. So we have the TS illusion going into the Y. And the example here, so that the person is asking if the assimilation would be ch, basically. So it would change into a CH sound, ch. So if we say it's yellow, it's yellow. No, absolutely not. If you say it cello, people are going to think you're saying this. It cello. In this particular case, that's what it sounds like. If we say, I don't know, that's, and then, wait, hold on. Yeah, okay. Confuse myself there. So the Y sound, that's young. I say that chung. Sounds kind of okay. Yeah, it's a bad example. That chung. I still don't recommend this. It's your, yeah, possible. If you ask me, for all 6 of these examples, a couple of them I just would straight up say no, like it doesn't work. For the ones that do work, with the exception of nice shoes, so the S to SH where you can just drop the S, all of the other ones that do technically work, I don't recommend. They can work, but they seem strange to me. And we're getting sort of into the territory of maybe like messy speech, really lazy speech, which again is fine if you're speaking quickly enough, if you're just kind of speaking lazily, like, but if you were to say wow, that chung, absolutely not. Absolutely, you have to have a certain amount of speed for that. Otherwise, it sounds ridiculous. It doesn't sound like you're saying. Again, here people are going to say like they're going to think you're saying like that, and then maybe like chung or something. And if there is no replacement of I mean, chung, I don't think is necessarily a word. I guess Wing Chun exists, but it's just weird. But even with Itzir, obviously that's a very common combination. If I say like it's your lucky day, it's your lucky day, it's your lucky day. Okay, yeah, sure. It doesn't sound too bad. But you could just as easily say it's your. Like, why blend it into ch when you can just as easily do a sia, like an sy combination? Like, maybe if that's particularly difficult for you, but see, sia will always work, right? If I say that's young, or if I say that's young, or if I say it's your lucky day, or I say it's your lucky day, it always works and it sounds great. Where if you try to change it into ch, maybe it'll work. If you're speaking quickly enough, but if you're not speaking quickly enough, it's just going to sound awful, absolutely awful. So I would not recommend it. No, just don't even bother with it. So that concludes that. I know there were a couple little interruptions in there, but that was a response to Haiyen in a comment on another video. And because of the nature of it, I wanted to do it in a video, and I wanted to do it live because it's easier that way. So now I can refer Haiyan to the start of this live stream. Okay, moving on. Can you say that's young? Wait, is that a typo with the H? It's supposed to be I don't know what you're trying to say there. Since we were talking about the ts yeah becoming ch, I'm going to assume that's what you're asking. That chung, what? You can say that chung. I would disagree. Again, if you're speaking really quickly, possibly, yeah, it might happen. But I would just very strongly recommend to avoid it, ignore it. It's not required to sound natural. It's not required to sound neutral. It's not required to, I mean, I guess maybe it can make speaking slightly easier if you're speaking quickly, which is probably why it exists in the first place, but I would not recommend it. Okay. Anyway, so we don't really have anybody here, which is great because that means I have no questions to answer. So you guys get to sit here and just look at me talk about random things. We need to do something more with these live streams or something different. I don't know, because the view count consistently is low, even though the number of subscribers has increased, especially over the last month. We've gotten quite a few new subscribers, and still we only get maybe at the most like 15 people in here at a time. I don't know why. Apparently nobody cares about a Q&A. So I know some of you come in here every week, and that's nice. I know Wendell's usually here asking questions, and that's good. But if it's only productive or useful for a very, very, very small number of people, I mean, I could spend time actually making videos or something. So I don't know. Some people watch the replay. Yeah, that's true too. Even then, though, I mean, I know that there are sometimes not like a gigantic amount, but quite a few replays in like the first few days or first week after. But even then, if I come over to my content here, lives, so it looks like at most, I only get maybe an average of like 200 to 250 views total on each live stream. That's on average. I see one here that's 114. There's another one over here that's 324, so that's a bit more. But yeah, so it's like, okay, so I do a live stream, which then only gets like maybe 300 views in its lifetime. Because I mean, who's going to go back and watch through an entire live stream? It's not really like, unless you're there to catch it because you couldn't attend the live stream and you want to watch through it. It doesn't really seem to have a lot of actual rewatch value for most people. Now, I could go in with timestamps and mark out certain things and this and that, but that is so time consuming for the live stream because it's so long. Maybe after I have an assistant, I'll have them do it. But we need to think of something else. And maybe we can also still do Q&A, but like there needs to be something else that goes on. It's just, I know some teachers, like they'll do like a live and it'll be like a lesson where it's like, oh, we're talking about stress today or whatever. But I'm just like, I could just make a video about that. Like, why would I do that in a live stream? So I don't know. It's just like there's, aside from Q&A, there's like nothing to do in a live stream. I know Fluent American does like where people send in pronunciation clips and like you get feedback and stuff, that we could maybe do something like that. But even then, it's like, it's kind of the same problem, I think. Because when people ask me questions, they're getting feedback on their questions, right? It could be grammar, it could be pronunciation, it could be this or that. And it's a different type of feedback, sure, it might be more valuable, but I also have for the memberships, what are my tiers here? Like the memberships let you get feedback too. So it's like, oh, well, if anybody can come to the live stream and give feedback, it's like, why even sign up for a membership? Although you do have to sign up for the $30 tier, but it's also because it's more valuable. So, and I already like do so much stuff for free. It's like, I need to, I need to have some point where it's like, I'm not like giving away my free labor. And I think direct feedback, whether that's, you know, live or just through email or something, that seems like something that I should probably have some sort of price on, which is why it's part of the membership thing. In very fast speech, can top vowel sound like a schwa? Okay, so you mean the ah vowel, the sound ah? We should probably also clarify here, because remember, I speak and teach with the cot merger. I think unmerged top would be like the sound in hot. That sort of thing can potentially maybe affect if it can sound more like a schwa, because the unmerged ah, like in hot, it is closer. Like the physical creation of the sound is much closer to the placement of the range of the sound that I call the schwa, so the upside down V, but it's below it. Let's see, it's on top of the counter. It's on top of the counter. Top. Put it on top. Put it on top. Put it on top. Put it on top of the counter. Put it on top of the counter. Put it on top of the counter. Maybe if you're speaking really quickly or lazily, it can kind of maybe sound sort of like a schwa, kind of. But again, fast and lazy, not normal speech. No. One general guideline. I'm getting ready to launch a new little mini series on the range of things, sounds, words, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm distracted there. Anyway, one nice little guideline is if a word is stressed. I'm talking about word stress, not sentence stress, because the way that's taught is kind of confusing. But if a word is stressed, or if a syllable in a word is stressed, remember, at really fast speed, things tend to start to kind of break. It doesn't mean it breaks everything, but things kind of start to break down. And we get weird things that we wouldn't normally get. But that's exceptional. That's super, super fast. In the normal range of speech, stressed syllables generally don't reduce. There are exceptions to that, like get very commonly reduces to get. It's still stressed, but it tends to kind of just change that vowel. So top is a content word, right? It's a single syllable content word. It's stressed. So odds are within the flow of normal speech, or especially slower, more enunciated speech, it will not get anywhere close to a schwa sound. Now, that doesn't mean you have to fully enunciate ah necessarily. You can do sort of a lazy ah. So instead of ah, 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 ah. Now, to you, that might start sounding kind of like a schwa, even though it's nowhere close to a schwa, because it seems that most teachers and resources just teach you sort of the pure, pristine, concept of a sound that is fully enunciated, and they don't really touch on the actual like flow of real speech, and how like every sound has its own range. So maybe that's the problem. I don't know, but the general guideline is if it's a stressed syllable, it won't reduce. So the only way that is going to become schwa-like, is if it's being reduced. So normally, no, that's probably not going to happen. Do you like burgers? Can I say it as, do you like burgers? Okay, good question. So yeah, do you like burgers? Do you like burgers? It can maybe sound a little informal depending on the context, because we're sort of right. Any pronunciation reduction that tends to in some way kind of break the grammar will tend to possibly sound more informal. So here we're not necessarily breaking the grammar, but we're kind of skipping over the oo and do in order to blend the d and yet into j. And so we're kind of breaking the word. It's like do is no longer there. We're just keeping the d part. And so that's why it can sound maybe a little more informal. But yeah, if I say, do you like burgers? Do you like burgers? Do you like burgers? In faster speech, it'll sound fine. It doesn't matter if it's formal or not. What do I say? Do you like burgers? Do you like burgers? Do you like burgers? You don't want to do it too slow, too clear, because obviously then we wouldn't reduce it in the first place, probably. If you say, do you like burgers? That's going to sound weird. But yeah, that's fine. Okay. We have 5 people in here, so we're getting some more people. Come on, people, any questions? Unless I can find a way to make these lives more valuable. Because I know that might be valuable to 1 or 2 people, but it's 1 or 2 people. So unless I can find a way to make it more valuable to more people, to where we're actually getting more people in the live stream that are coming in. I don't know, maybe it's because I don't advertise it. There's sometimes where I'll post that on Twitter, or I'll make things about it, but we're here every week, so, and we're not really getting any more viewers. So it's kind of like, I don't want to stop doing the live streams. I don't plan to stop doing the live streams, but it's kind of like, why are we here? Why are we here? It's just kind of frustrating. Okay. What is happening over here? Did my analytics break? Okay. It wasn't loading everything. I was like, what? Okay. Anyway. I will say, though, my TS Illusion video, so my top performing video on my channel that has the most views is my review of Elsa, or at least the AI engine of Elsa. And that consistently gets like 1,000 views a month. No other video has performed that well, but my TS Illusion lesson has outperformed it, which is very interesting. It's at about 1,500 instead of 1,000. So almost 1,500 videos or views in a month period, which is pretty crazy. If I can get a couple other videos like that, things will be really great. Anyway, what are we doing, guys? Nobody has any questions? You guys are here. What are the questions? People who are being silent. I mean, you can be silent if you want, but like, why are you here? Ask questions. When should I use the apostrophe S to show possession? Whenever you need to use the apostrophe S. You mean like as opposed to of? 9 times out of 10. English much prefers This is a blanket statement. There are plenty of times where you can use of to show possession. Of course, we have the possessive pronouns where there's no apostrophe s, but it's the pronoun shows the possession, so it's fine. There are plenty of cases where you can use of the color of the sky's color. That's fine. But overall, there's going to be many cases where of just kind of sounds weird, and the apostrophe s will work just fine. So whether it's apostrophe s or a possessive pronoun, when in doubt, use that. Because I'm pretty sure that will always work. Where of might not. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking, because usually it's in the context of like of verse, other ways to show possession. So if you're thinking of it in a different way, or you have a slightly different form of that question, let me know. But I assume it's in relation to of. I can make my response video too. Like, seriously, I'm so far behind on content. I can tell you guys my plans so that you can watch them not happen. I've already done that before, though. As I said, I have the range videos coming up. Nasalizing vowels. More extra practice, of course. Today, the thing that I usually do after the live stream, I'm not doing today. And I'm going to see, it's going to really suck, but I'm going to see if I can just record like 5 videos to work on throughout the week. And that would be great. But I have to do a little bit of planning for some of them, because I have the basic idea and concept, but like example words or example phrases and stuff, like I have to think about those, and that gets in the way, makes it harder. That's okay. Okay, nothing else, no questions. We're just dead today. This is the first one in August. Yeah, first live stream in August. Apparently everybody left for August holidays, which don't exist. I don't know. Let's see what else. What else? Honestly, having a really hard time staying on top of things. I did get the idea. I can't do this right now. Yeah, we have questions. Another person. I can't do this right now, but I was thinking about this yesterday. So I with my second job, I have to continue doing that because it's one of my main forms of income right now, and I'm behind on some things that I have to pay for, like taxes. But once I start getting some things sorted out, I'm thinking about maybe just kind of like going all in on the channel, and trying to do it like full time, to just like YouTube, the blog, the podcast, the social media, all the stuff that I don't want to do, in order to grow it faster, and reach the tipping point I need. But especially with how the economy is going, that seems like an extremely dangerous thing to do. So I don't know. But I'm trying to make more time to do videos and stuff. But anyway, Tony, welcome, Tony. I've got problems pronouncing RD cluster. Okay. Do you have any tips for that? Well, your specific examples that you gave also have a vowel after it, which makes it harder. So just to clarify, like if you just say the word, for example, hard, or word, okay, do you have any troubles with that? Because if you have troubles with that, that's where you want to start. So let me know about that, and we'll come back. Those are easy. Okay. So here's the thing. Really need to make a frequently asked questions playlist. So if you ask a linguist, which I'm not a linguist, so maybe not, but my understanding is that if you ask a linguist, they will tell you that R is a consonant sound. Is a consonant sound. It's not a vowel. And that might be true in some sense, but that's okay because it doesn't really matter. The sound, the way that I teach it and the way that I speak, and even if the concept is not 100% objectively accurate in terms of what a linguist would label things, I do think that the way that we perceive certain things or categorize certain things, especially relative to that particular language and how that language works, is extremely useful. And this is one of the points that people who may have learned things elsewhere, especially if they get really into linguistics and then they still have trouble and they have questions and they come to me, I have to recategorize some things for them, and it usually helps. So that's my little preface here. So when we're talking about I don't want to do a crazy deep dive here. I know I tend to kind of ramble a little bit. I'm going to try to get to the point, but we also don't have a whole lot of questions here. I know Alan has a question. Peter, welcome. Let me know if you have any questions. But so there's the consonant. Right, this is how I teach it. This is how I speak. It still sound very natural, very neutral. For some reason, it's easier for me to say 30 than 40. There's probably a reason for that, and I was going to touch on that too. I like to lay everything out so we have all the pieces first, because if I don't do that, sometimes people get lost. Kaisha, welcome. Okay, so we have the consonant and we have the vowel. Okay, not like R or just as a vowel. Now, if you go to traditional sources, you go to the dictionary, you talk to other teachers, there's going to be like a little schwa plus the consonant. Number one, you don't have to do that. You don't have to try to say like a little tiny and then go into You just go straight into You can produce both of these, the as a consonant, as a vowel, exactly the same. Again, not R, not or, those are colored, just the basic vowel. You can pronounce them exactly the same. You don't have to do anything special. You will still sound very natural, very neutral, because the difference in sound between trying to do directly as a vowel or starting in the schwa, which is very hard for me to do, the difference in sound between those two is so small that nobody's going to notice and you're going to sound perfectly fine. So this is one of the hacks that allow you to learn English more easily. Because the way that it's traditionally taught, although in some way objectively accurate, is also not required. It's not. It's also relative, because the way the accent that tends to be taught in American English is held up as the neutral accent, when General American is an umbrella term that applies not only to most American speakers, but to also many Canadians, with very slight differences here and there. And this will not give you any sort of different type of sound. You're going to sound perfectly fine, perfectly normal, perfectly natural, and neutral. Okay, so that being said, what is the difference between the vowel and the consonant if you produce them the same? Well, the consonant is going to be tiny, just relative to the vowel. It has nothing to do with the stress or any objective length, but relative to the vowel, the consonant will be very, very short. So if I say run, okay, I see you here, Peter. Yes, hi, Peter. Let me know if you have questions. If I say run, okay, you don't want to say run or run. You say run. It's a nice little short okay. Now, if I say earth, it doesn't make too much of a difference here if I try to make that nice and short, because it just kind of sounds like I'm speaking more quickly. So it's not as big of a deal here. But if I try to say like earth, 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 okay, it just sounds like I'm saying the word really fast. But I'm producing them exactly the same, just That's it. It's just an R sound. Okay. Now, that being said, Okay, so we have the sound going into another sound like the D. Okay. Now, say in the word word, okay, it's spelled OR, but remember, we can't trust spelling, especially for the R sounds. There are some patterns, but OR is the WOR words. If you see WOR, like word, work, world, there might be an exception. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure those are always just going to be pronounced It's a big exception group because OR, usually if it's stressed, it's going to be pronounced or, and then if it's not stressed, it'll be reduced to but these words are stressed, the WOR words, and they're still pronounced so this is just a regular vowel. Okay, you don't have to do a little plus Ignore all that. It just makes it more complicated and stupid. Just Okay, so we go W to to D. D, word. All right, and you say that you can do that pretty easily. Okay, good. Now, what happened? There's a reason why I'm going into all this. Don't worry. Because I thought of one thing and I was like, well, I have to explain something before I get to that point. So when we are doing, let me gather my thought here. Yeah. When you're going, we know that with the D, the flapped D, whether it's spelled with a T or not, it's a flapped D. There's no flapped T sound. If you're going from vowel to T or D at the start of an unstressed syllable into another vowel, or if it links over and it's between two vowels, it's still going to be weak. That triggers the conditions to flap it into a flap D. So in the case of 40, okay, or, well, 40 has an or. So if we say, well, harder, order, worder is not a word, but it uses the sound. And I want to start there because it's just the basic vowel. And think, let's see, word herder. Let's do herder because that's actually a word. So herder, we're going as a vowel, and then there's a D, and then there's another So if you try to say herder with like not a flap D, just a regular weak D, it's possible. It's very easy to do it wrong and make it sound over exaggerated. But anytime we're going from, in this particular case, it's kind of hard. Wait, why am I doing herder? It doesn't have to be. I confused myself. Sorry. I'm making it even more difficult for you. Now we're going from flap D into which is extra difficult. Let's change that. Let's change word to wordy. There we go. Easier vowel. I got so fixated on the part, I decided to put it at the end also. Okay, wordy. So now you're going from into D into E. Okay, it's spelled with a Y, but it's an E sound. Wordy. Okay. Now, again, we do have to. We're going to flap the D. What if we don't flap the D? Wordy. Just sounds like you're really clearly enunciating it for some reason. It stands out for sure. Wordy. It's very wordy. So it's not the normal way we're going to say it. What we're going to do is we're going to go We're going to reach forward and tap the D as we go on our way to E. Wordy. Sounds very nice. Okay. But that could be hard to do because if you go from to D, you might be able to do that fine. Erd. Okay. Can you then flap into another vowel? And if the next sound isn't a vowel, if you say a word, like that word makes me angry. So word and makes. Well, we actually probably go into a stop B there, but word makes. It's a little weird. But let's just say we keep it a D. Word makes. You're stopping the D. You don't have to push out the D. It's a lot easier. You're just going into that position. Then you close the lips into M. Word makes. Okay. It's not too hard. But as soon as you have to flap that D into a vowel sound, now it becomes a lot harder because you're flapping the D. So that's one thing. Okay. Now, when we go into what you're saying, 40, order. Okay. In the first case, 40. So now instead of we have or. Okay, and the way that I teach this, it's not R because I have the cot merger, so ah or ah doesn't exist. It becomes or. It's an O plus or. So 40, you're going to do the same thing as wordy, except instead of just a pure going into that, you need to go or, which ends in the and then flap it into the flap D plus E. 40, D. So if you can't do from to flap to E, like in this case, whatever the next sound is, you want to do that first, and then when you need to color the vowel, like an or R, party, 40, then you need to be able to do that part and be able to get into that end position with the R. So if you don't have that piece, you need to get that piece first as well. Then when you can get into the R and then tap into the D to go into the next vowel, it's going to be a lot easier. But it is a relatively difficult combination. In the case of order, this is one of the most difficult words to pronounce because not only do you have first an R-colored vowel or, then you have the flapped D going again into right? And this is still a flap D. That's why I explained how like can be a vowel. If you use an R-colored vowel, it's still treated as a vowel. So or is not like or is complicated. If I say like R, it's not just like, oh, there's and then the consonant. No, it's R as a vowel sound. It's one vowel sound. I don't care if that's not linguistically accurate. It's a good way to think about it, and it's a better way to think about it in English. So anyway, if you don't have basic control over the structure of the R, it's going to be hard. If you can't flap your D, it's going to be hard. If you can't combine those two, it's going to be impossible. So you need the pieces, and then you need to work on transitioning. But in addition to that, my single biggest tip, I feel like I'm a broken record, my single biggest tip, especially for the R or for any type of difficult transition like this, mouth posture, mouth posture, mouth. I'm going to say it a million times, mouth posture. If you don't have the right mouth posture, things become a lot more difficult to pronounce. Some things anyway, like trying to roll a Spanish R when your mouth posture is really open, like in American English, is almost impossible. But if you have more of a closed mouth Spanish posture, rolling the R becomes a lot easier because you don't have to cover as much space to get your tongue up to tap or to trill. It's just one example. But say doing the R in English, especially American English, we have a lot of space in our mouth. Even when we do the tongue is going to take up a lot of that space, but that's why it's even more important to have a lot of space, because if you don't have enough space to begin with and you try to do R, you're trying to do right? It's immediately going to sound more closed, more restricted. It's going to be harder to hear. You're going to sound kind of harder to understand. It's going to be harder to pronounce. So, and then of course there's the lazier version of the R, which is part of the range of the R sound that I'll be talking about in the near future. But mouth posture. Okay, Alan, in your accent, do you use normal back oo and o vowels or use oo and o fronting in words like go? Okay. It's a good question. I haven't analyzed this one. I'm aware of the fronting thing. I think I've noticed that maybe sometimes I might get some fronting, but it's not something I've actually fully studied. But right, so if I say ooh, like I don't know how else you would say that. Like, let me see. I'm trying to think, because I think in like the stereotypical California accent, which I don't have, they definitely have the fronting. So if I say, I think the California accent, who, Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I don't have the fronting. No. No. It would start sounding weird. So I would say I just have normal oo and o. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Regardless, if you start fronting things, you probably are going to have a bit of an accent, and my pronunciation is a very neutral accent. So that in itself would tell me that I don't have it. Even if I did have it, you could just ignore that one point because I don't teach it that way for sure. So it kind of like Rachel's English, where for some unknown reason, some unfathomable reason that doesn't make any sense to me, she has the cot merger, but she doesn't teach the cot merger. It doesn't make any sense to me because it's the cot merger and how common it is, and makes English a lot easier while still sounding generally very neutral. But at the same time, let's pretend that I did have, some fronting of oo or o. I don't teach that. And if you hear that and I don't, then just ignore it. Like, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. So, but I'm pretty sure I don't. Okay, for some reason, okay. Kaisha, a difference between there is and that is in fast speech. Huh. Okay, I'm pretty sure I know where the source of this problem is coming from. It's probably some native language interference with the tap R versus flat D. Okay, so, well, if I 9 times out of 10, these are going to be contracted, and it's going to be a lot easier in that case. If I say there's, okay, so it's plus z, there's, or it's not there, like there, something like that. It's just right? There's. And then if we say that's, it's the TS illusion. So we go to the T and we push out the S. So that should be pretty clear if they're contracted. If they're not, let me know, because that's going to be an interesting case. But if we don't contract it, so we have there is, and we say fast speech, there's. Okay, if I say that is. So in the first case, there's an R colored going into era. The second case, there's a flapping into a D that goes into What I'm imagining is that due to your native language, with the tapped R, you know that there's an R in there, and in faster speech, your brain may be trying to put a tapped R in there is, even though there isn't one. Weird perception problems like that can happen based on your native language. That's what I would assume is the source of the problem. That's the only way that it makes sense to me. But, at the end of the day, you just keep listening, keep training your ears. From my perspective as a native, these don't in any way sound even remotely close to each other. The vowels are completely different. The consonants are completely different. For the air and the air, I guess it would just be a vowel, and then a into flat D. But it's possible to have problems with that. So I don't know. Hopefully my explanation helps. But at the end of the day, if they sound the same, you just got to focus on it and just continue to pay attention. And so it's flat versus R. Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking, Abdullah. Okay. Yeah, it's very normal, Kaisha. I want you to know this is very normal. I have students that have problems like that. And it seems kind of weird. It's like, why is this problem here? Because they should sound quite different, but if they don't, that's just how it is, and it's normal. It's very fine. You can work on it. Okay, Alan, please. Thank you. Help me out. Perfect. Good. Please explain transition between R flat D R in word order. Okay, so I think you mean flapped D. There is no such thing as a flat D. If anything, that makes me think it's just a regular D, like duh. But in that case, no, because it wouldn't even be flat, because if we're talking about flattening it, it's going to start sounding like the dental D, which would make it into a TH in English. So I'm pretty sure you mean flapped. Well, I was talking about that earlier when I was answering Tony's question. You have to be able to do or, which ends in Then specifically on this point, so for the transition, right, the flat D, it just taps here. Okay, it doesn't touch the teeth. It's going to be more or less on that bump, but depending on what sound you're coming from and what sound you're going to will determine the exact way that you tap and to some extent the placement. So in this case, we're going from behind the D into the D, which means that you have to tap this way, flap this way. Okay, so instead normally, like if I say what if, it's just, it goes here and then into I, but it's kind of just relatively easy, right? You're just tapping it. But here you have to go from tap it this way. Okay, now if I'm going, say, or R, whatever, like party, order, wordy, like I was talking about earlier, I'm going into E. I'm going to go tap it this way, release into E, wordy, or party. Okay. But if you're going from a flap D into an R, you have to tap and pull. Okay. And it's actually, in order to make this easier, we tend to kind of go way back here to where we're not even on the bump anymore. It's that part of your mouth where it starts going up onto this part here. And sometimes if we're speaking really quickly, we won't even, we'll just sort of touch the sides of the tip. We won't even touch make a full tap here. It'll just kind of be like that, instead of like that where it all taps. So there's sort of a little opening. That makes it a lot easier to do. But regardless, you need to tap and pull into Okay, so if I say water, okay. Now that in itself is already difficult enough. So if you're going from like or R into the flap into the next sound, you have to push into whatever the next sound is. If you're going from D into you have to tap and pull. Now in this case, in a word like border or order, you have to go from the into the tap, back into the Okay, so that's the transition. It can be very difficult to do. It's kind of a mouthful even for us natives. So border, and you can't really do it slowly. Unfortunately, it's really hard to do slowly because it's going to start breaking down and sounding very, very weird. Like I say, border, it doesn't sound right. So it has to be quick. I mean, it's a flap. I tap it. It has to be quick. But you just go right back into the position where you were. Erder. So you can remove the or part, the O or the ah or whatever part it is. Just go into the straight and just practice that. You can also practice, as I said, instead of trying to get like full contact and tapping or tapping and pulling, you can do that part there, place it sort of like right there instead of on the bump, place it right there. Let the tip of your tongue be kind of lazy to where you're just sort of barely tapping it like that, very lightly. And that's going to make it easier to do. Order. order. That's the little native trick or hack that we have to make speaking easier. But again, also mouth posture. If your mouth posture is off, it's going to be harder to transition. Like if your tongue is pushed forward and your mouth is closed, so you're like, if your native language kind of maybe is a bit more like this. Okay, so si estoy hablando español, suena bien. But if I'm speaking English, it sounds a little bit weird, a little bit kind of out of place. My voice is a little bit off, a little bit higher because I'm my tongue is pulling things up a little bit. I don't have as much space to form the sounds. Okay, now if I try to say order, I can still form it pretty well because I'm a native. I have very good control over the sounds and stuff. But it's still just, I mean, just my general voice with my tongue pushed forward and my mouth more closed just doesn't sound right. So of course it's going to make that not sound right. I can still do that transition fairly nicely. But it could be that the reason why you sound off, like if you compare yourself to a native and you're like, I don't sound like that. It could be that maybe the sounds themselves are fine. Maybe the transition is fine. Maybe your mouth is too close. Maybe your tongue is pushed too far forward based on your native language. If you're a Spanish speaker, if you're a Spanish speaker, we'll just leave it as Spanish speaker. Spanish and Russian for sure. Those two, much more closed mouth, much more push forward tongue. Or so it seems so far based on my experience. I don't know if that applies to all speakers of all dialects of those languages, but that does seem to be the case. If you're a speaker Portuguese seems to have a bit more of an open mouth, closer to American English, but maybe not quite as open. But the tongue is still pushed forward. Same thing with German. German seems to have a much more open mouth, similar to American English, but the tongue is still pushed forward. And my experience with the German part is a speaker from not actual Germany, but can't remember. It's one of the other countries. But he's a native German speaker. So perhaps somebody from, I don't know, I cannot think right now. Somebody from, Munich, we changed it. Or Berlin or something. Maybe it's a little different for them. I don't know, but probably not. Anyway, point is that mouth posture is important and can make things easier, or just fix your general sound. Sometimes it's hard to hear the difference between how are you and how old are you in fast speech. Is the word old reduced, or what might be the reason? Okay, so if I say how are you? Okay, so how are you? How are you? How are you? Now I can contract the how and the are. But we're probably not going to do that as the initial question. Like if I say, how are you? How are you? How are you? It's a little bit weird because we want to focus on the are, right? How are you? How are you? In response, right? Then I can almost like 99% of the time we're going to contract it. You could say like, good, how are you? But we're probably going to say good. Or let's see, I contracted it. You could say like, good, how are you? How are you? But we're probably going to say, how are, good, how are you? How are you? Anyway, point is that it could potentially be hower or howar. Now, when we say how old are, okay, so now we have the word old in between. There's a whole word there. So I'm not going to reduce the R. If I say, how are you? How are you? How old are you? How old are you? How old are you? How old are you? Now, it's actually kind of difficult to not reduce R to after the old. Like I really have to try to enunciate if I'm trying to still speak quickly. Because remember, in fast speech, we're almost guaranteed to contract if possible. Even in normal speech, we're like 9 times out of 10 we're going to contract if possible. But in fast speech, it's pretty much guaranteed. Like really fast speech. So it'd be like older. It's going to sound exactly like older. How old are you? How old are you? How old are you? Now, this is another point. Remember we were talking earlier about how like is a consonant and a vowel. L is a consonant and a vowel too. And some of you might be like, hold the phone. That's just one step too many for me. In which case you can agree to disagree. That's fine. Consonant. I've had a couple discussions with other people about this. Again, I don't care if it's objectively accurate. The categorization makes a lot more sense, makes it easier to learn English. There's the L consonant, which I like to call the full L. It's commonly called by most other people the light L. And that's, you have full contact. The back of the tongue tends to be not as present. And we say la 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 la. It sounds very light. Okay, I guess it makes sense. I never really understood in the past why one was called light and why one was called dark. After working with it for a while, I'm starting to kind of understand why they say that, but I still don't think they're the best terms. Okay, light, la la la, love, like, la la la. Okay, that's fine. So that's the full L consonant. And there's a half L, half L vowel sound, half L vowel sound, which is commonly called the dark L. Now for the half L vowel, I include that for any of the L colored vowels. Yes, there are L colored vowels, ill, L, all, owl, ol. All of those you can think of as L colored, as well as the syllabic L would also be a half L vowel, dark L. It's just ol. Dictionary, a lot of the time you'll see this with like a schwa sound and an L, like saying people. You don't have to do that. Just like with as a vowel, you don't have to put a little schwa before it. You can just go straight into ol, and it's perfectly fine. People, not people, people. You could say it that way. It's fine. There are plenty of people who say it that way, but it's not required. You just say people, bull. You can already be in that ol when you release the P. Okay, so you can use that directly as a vowel itself. Okay, and you don't have to actually touch the top. It doesn't matter what the front of your tongue does, really. I used to teach it that like you can't touch the top. After a little bit more experimentation and some feedback from another native, I realized that because I don't touch the top like ever when I do the dark L, but apparently some natives do. So it's actually more the little tweak that you do at the back of the tongue where it's placed, but you don't have to actually touch with the front. It doesn't matter. Okay, that being said, why am I mentioning that? Well, if ol is an L colored vowel, which makes it a vowel sound, and then ah or r or is after it, and there's a D in between, well, guess what? We can flap that D, right? We now have a trigger to flap the D. Flapping D after ol is a little bit difficult, but it does happen. You don't have to do it. You can make it a little more solid. Say like older, or oldar. Sounds perfectly fine if you do that. But especially in faster speech, older. Older. So I'm doing that same tap and pull like I was talking about with order, except instead of or, it's ol in front of it. Older. Okay, say oldar. Okay. That being the case, that could possibly maybe be part of why it's hard for you to hear in fast speech, because you're not expecting there to be a flap D, I assume. And flapping the D is by default a less clear version of the D. And then we have the ol in there, which itself, I mean, it doesn't sound like or necessarily, but it kind of has a similar type of feeling to it. Ol, or. It's kind of like there's sort of a certain shape in the mouth going on that gives a similar type of effect. So that could maybe be hiding it. But these things happen. Just train your ear, pay closer attention, focus on fast speech. You can try to find multiple examples of that. If you go to, say, what is it? Youglish. If you go to Youglish, you can type in, I would make sure you have the American option on so you don't get any British or whatever. But you can type in like, how are you? And just like listen to a bunch of people say it, right? Just like, how are you? Next. How are you? Next. How are you? Next. It's not always going to be the first thing they say, but you can listen to many people say it, and then you type in, how old are you? And listen to many people say that. And your brain is going to start to figure out, oh, okay, when old is between how and r, it tends to sound like this. It's not always going to sound exactly the same. There's a range of pronunciation. because that's how English works. But it's going to sound, the pieces are going to be there in some way, and your brain is going to start to pick up on those pieces. So that's what I would recommend, maybe trying that. How are you versus who are you? Okay, one is ow, one is ooh. They sound so similar. They can, yeah. Partially because there's an H in front of it, right? So we hear that, right? It's nice and clear usually at the beginning. And then in addition to that, the R can reduce to but so the end of ow and the end of ooh, if they're being enunciated clearly enough, will be roughly kind of close to the W. It's not fully into a W, but it starts approaching the W. But in either case, is there an actual W? Now you can link with a small W. That's fine. Again, it's just a small W, it's not a full W, because we're going into a vowel. That'll just naturally happen. So then the key is in who, right? Remember, H is the what I like to call the voiceless vowel, or the voiceless vowel consonant, because all vowels are voiced, but H pretty much generally just takes the shape of the vowel that's after it. So when we say who, we might not start completely into oo, but you can, or you could be slightly out of it. It's fine. But either way, we're going to start to hear a voiceless oo before the oo starts. Who. I don't change anything. I don't move anything. All I do is add that voice. Okay. Now, if you do that and you say, okay, well, what about if there's ow? So we know oo and ow are going to end in a similar place, but who would be like a voiceless oo plus an oo, a regular voiced oo, where how is going to be like a voiceless ah, the start of ow, plus a regular voiced ah, plus the end of ow, which technically ends in the position, but the lips come around and sounds very similar to oo. So that's what you want to listen for. You want to listen for when the voice starts. Is it in oo already, or is it more open in ah? Okay. How are you? 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 Especially fast, it can be kind of hard to pick up, but you want to listen for that. How are, who are. Okay. Especially with the R, it can actually become a little easier to hear, I think. But if I just say how, who, how, who. So that ow is much more open. There's a lot more space coming out, or a lot more space for the sound to come out. So focus on that, and that will probably help. O plus a vowel sounds similar to oo plus a vowel. Especially if we are doing it very lazily, yes, it can. If I say, I think we do combination. Okay, if we do you eat. Oh, you're welcome, Tony. You eat. Okay, so it's oo, e. If I say go eat, okay, so it's o and e. You eat, go eat, you eat, go eat. Okay. Now again, similar to ow and oo, o is a little bit more open. There's a bit more motion to it. So that's something you can listen for. They're both going to link with a small w. If I fully enunciate them, not with like a separation, but if I just say them both very clearly, you eat, you eat, you eat, go eat, go eat. And let me go ahead and drop the g and the y so that we can really dial in here. Oo eat, oo eat, o eat, o eat. Still sounds kind of similar, and if you have a problem with that, that's normal. You just got to train your ears more. But that shouldn't be too difficult, I think, for a lot of people. You should more or less hear one is an oo, one is an o. There should be some difference there, at least in comparison. But the range for oo and o, as well as ow, when we fully enunciate them, we can bring the lips all the way, if we're really exaggerating, you, go. Okay, we don't tend to do that unless we're really exaggerating. So more of like a not exaggerated, fully enunciated range would be like you go, you go. But we see the lips; they kind of do this. They don't just come straight out like this. Okay, there's actually, I think, a little bit more of a difference in sound in English than say in Spanish, where it's like ooh, oh, ooh, oh, ooh, oh, ooh, oh, ooh, oh, because of how the lips are moving. But anyway, that aside, that's probably relative. When we are speaking a little bit more lazily or especially faster, we're not going to take the time to move those lips around. And you kind of just need a little twinge, a little tweak, right? So if I say ooh, 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 you see my lips barely move, perfectly fine. If I say oh, 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 okay, maybe a little bit more with oh, but again, it doesn't really have to move too much. Now it's not doing this. We still have this basic little sort of up and out, but it's just very, very small. Now, if you do that, combine that with fast speech, again, I'll drop the y and the g. We say you eat, you eat, you eat, you eat. Or you say oi, 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 you eat, oi, 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 oi. Okay, you can focus in on that and train your ears, but they sound a lot more similar there because I'm not even fully forming either sound. I'm doing them both lazily, which is perfectly fine, normally part of their ranges. But at that range, they do start sounding a lot more similar. To me, they still sound very different, but I can tell compared to if I try to say them more clearly, they do sound a lot more similar than the clearly enunciated versions. So I think the range is probably throwing you off there. Welcome, Fernando. Let me know if you have questions. Okay, back to where I was. But hopefully that helps, Abdullah. Was that Abdullah? Yeah. If not, I don't know. Good luck. But at the end of the day, right, the more you target something, you give your brain food for it, it's gonna start sorting it out. It might take a little longer for some people than for others, but your brain will start to sort things out eventually. But if you don't target it, it may never figure it out. You need to give it enough specific food. Please, I will be glad to talk with you one-on-one. Possibly your email address. Thank you, sir. Peter, I think it was Peter. If not, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure this was the same person. As I mentioned before in some video comments that you left, any chance to talk with me directly, the one possibility is to become a top tier member, which is like $50 a month, where you will get some direct feedback from me. You can sign up for classes that they might be open right now. I'm not sure on italki. I will not be, my email is listed on my about page, but I'm not going to do like any interaction will either be because you're signed up for the top tier membership or through italki. So that's those are the channels you have to go through. Otherwise, I don't just like randomly, have conversations with people one-on-one because I don't have time for that. And yeah, if I did that for everybody, I'd be busy all day trying to talk to people and not getting paid for it. So, so if you go through one of those proper channels, then you will have a chance to interact directly with me. But otherwise, that's what you got. Okay, Alan, in mouth posture, do you feel that you push down the muscles of the floor of the mouth? Well, if I do, for American English, to me, I'm not going to feel it because it's just going to be normal. I have had one student, only one student, that sort of got caught up on that. It did seem to maybe give him a little bit of a better result when he tried to focus sort of like on these muscles under here. But I've had other students, he was a Russian speaker. I even had other Russian speakers who that wasn't necessarily a problem. I don't have a definitive answer on this particular point right now. What I will say is that it's probably partially going to be relative. Now, it does seem that many languages compared to American English have the tongue pushed forward and have the mouth more closed. It's generally held in a more closed position. That doesn't mean you can't open into like or something like that. It just generally tends to be held more closed. Because unlike the way that most teachers teach you, the mouth does not do this when we're speaking, right? We don't say, "I see a man over there." We don't speak like that. The jaw stays roughly where it is, and then if we need to fully enunciate a more open sound, it'll open a bit more, but it tends to kind of just stay where it is. And in many other languages, like in Spanish, Russian, especially Russian, because Russians, when speaking Russian, speak with their mouths very closed, and it's a problem when they learn English. But Spanish, Russian, the mouth, it's not like it's like this, like you're speaking to your teeth, right? But relatively, it's objectively, it's a small change. There's only so much you can open your mouth, but there's a bit of a difference there. Now I'm talking about that because perhaps there's something here that is like you push some of these muscles down with your tongue or whatever, especially if you're trying to get a nice good center of gravity. A little bit of pushing down there might help, but that could also maybe end up causing some other problems. So again, I don't have a definitive answer, but what I will say, your guideline, right, feel free to play with things. That's actually the whole purpose. And I'm going to give an analogy here that I think is really important because I can clip this out later. But the purpose, I want to say the purpose. You should link jaw openness with clarity. Okay. If I'm speaking Spanish, right, so if my jaw is, say, maybe more around here, okay, instead of, I kind of have a bit more open, probably in American English. Just doesn't seem like much, but it's a little bit more open. I kind of try to hold it just a little bit more closed. Okay, I don't have enough space in English to make all the sounds very well, and so it sounds sort of mumbly, restricted, kind of right? Pero si estoy hablando español, and my jaw's like this, okay, if I go into English, it's immediately less clear. Pero si estoy hablando español, suena bien. And on the opposite, okay, so if I go back into American posture, a little bit more open here, okay, si estoy hablando español, quizás suena un poco más open, abierta. To a Spanish speaker, I don't know if that would sound a little too open, a little too, like, kind of some of the sounds are a little out of place because my mouth is more open. I don't know, I'm not a native. But I do know that if I'm speaking English and I have my jaw a little bit more closed, it doesn't sound like I have enough space to form the sounds. So the jaw, at least in terms of American English, if your jaw is not open enough, you will not sound clear enough. Now, if you get your jaw open enough, again, not too much, there's a point you can go past, but if you get your jaw open enough and you can generally hold it there, now some of your sounds are probably going to be off because you're not used to holding your jaw that open. So if you got to go up into D, you have to go farther up, this and that, whatever. That's okay. I don't care if the articulation of your sounds are clear. Does your voice sound clearer? Okay. So if I'm doing, so yeah, whatever sound, it doesn't matter. I'm just sort of moving things around in here. See, you can hear it's just a little clear. It's a little more open sounding. So Anyway, you get the point. If you're speaking, if you're trying to speak English, if you're trying to say a sentence like I want to go to the beach or whatever, and if you say it normally, and then you try to open your jaw a little bit more and you say it again, if it sounds, even if the sounds aren't perfect, the individual sounds, but if your voice in your general sentence sounds like it's more open, coming through more clearly, then you're good. Okay, that's a good sign. Now, if your jaw is open enough and you still don't seem to have enough space, perhaps your native posture has the muscles down here also sort of tight and pushed up, in which case, I don't even know how you would do that. So maybe you're kind of like this, kind of, I guess. I don't know. It's really weird. In which case, try to push those down, try to relax those, and just see what happens. You have to explore it, right? I can give you all the pieces, but even if I had every single answer for every single language and every single, whatever, at the end of the day, you have to explore it. You have to figure out how it feels. You have to focus on your ear, focus on your mouth, and try to use feedback and lots of practice, lots of little changes to get the right result. I can't do that for you. It's not easy. It's not easy. I've had several people, I think like 3 or 4 people now, that seem to have just like disappeared from the course. And I think 2 of them didn't make it past phase 0 because they couldn't see the value in it, even though nobody sees the value in it until phase 2. And a couple other people that made it into phase 1, maybe the start of phase 2, and then they kind of disappeared. And a couple of people are on vacation, so I'm not counting them. But it's hard work at the beginning. It's very hard work. It's very front heavy as you try to figure out how to manipulate things. But if you keep going, and again, you want to shoot for 80% accuracy, 80% consistency. If you can do that for any given thing, you can continue to massage it and make a little improvement on the side as you move on to new things. I do not recommend trying to 100% things before you move on, because you're just going to be stuck there forever. And plus, some of the things that you do later are going to help you further refine some of the things from earlier. So it's all one big process. Okay, don't get stuck on anything. But again, you need to hit that 80% mark. And that could be hard to tell yourself. That's one reason why I offer feedback to the YouTube membership levels. There's a cheaper one where you can get audio feedback. There's a more expensive one where you can actually have calls with me, or a call with me once a month. But if your ears are good enough, because some people's ears are, then, and they will also get better as you go, but you kind of got to get to that point. Then you can more or less do it yourself, or just like ask a friend or a language exchange partner and do it that way. But yeah. Anyway, okay. Fernando, is there any rule on when to use the aspirated K and the unaspirated one? Yes, it's in the lesson on the K. Did you not watch it? It's literally right in the lesson. I think I talked about it again in the extra practice lessons. That's okay though. That's okay. Okay, the aspirated K. This is. I want again. This is why it's important to conceptualize the way that we conceptualize things. Okay, what is aspiration? Aspiration is where there's a extra push out of breath, right? So an extra. So there's like, you could do in some languages their K doesn't have any aspiration at all. They just say gut, 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 gut. Okay, it's a K sound, but you don't hear any breath. Okay, then you could say k, 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 or maybe you're really trying to push it out really, really strongly for some reason. It's maybe a bit too much for English, but that would be very strong aspiration. Okay, so then we think, okay, well, based on how English works, we know that English is a stress-timed language. Stress-timed language, very important. Okay, so if the timing, the rhythm is based on the stress, if we have an aspirated K and an unaspirated K, the reason why we have 2 is because, and this may not necessarily be the reason why it has to be this way. Maybe there's other languages that are also stress timed that don't do this, but a logical thing to a logical way to look at it, a logical concept to tie things together to make them easy to understand would be that, well, if I have K at the start of a stressed syllable in a stressed time language needs to be louder, it needs to be longer than an unstressed syllable, right? Which means there's probably going to be a bit more force to that syllable, which is where the aspiration basically comes from. Okay, now that may not be 100% objectively accurate. I don't care. Conceptually, it makes sense. And you can remember, oh, okay, it's at the start of a stressed syllable, right? Because of the stress. So, kick, call, chord, according, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We hear that little extra breath. The unaspirated would then be technically any other K if it's not at the start of a stressed syllable. As I talk about with the stop K, that tends to happen at the end of words if it doesn't link to anything. But even then, it's very common to do that. But even then, it's still possible to release a little weak K. It's fine. And if you fully enunciate the word without stopping it, you can push out a normal weak K instead of a small weak K. But it doesn't matter. It's fine. But technically, any K that is not at the start of an unstressed, in other words, the aspirated K is reserved for being at the start of a stressed syllable. Now, there is a special kind of K. I forget what it's called. Somebody asked me about it before. That you might hear even at the end of a word. If I say like basic, but I say basic. So that's not a normal K. That's not a normal K with like less breath. It's I'm really pushing it out in a particular way. That is something that you never have to do. You don't have to care about, but it is something that natives will sometimes do as a form of sort of playing with the language a little bit. It's not actually a part of the language itself as like a required sound. You never have to do that. So I just say ignore that. It doesn't matter. There's one more thing I want to say about that. What was that? Aspirated, unaspirated, strongly weak. Oh, yeah. Now, when you have a weak K at the start of a word, just like it's the same with a weak P. Because, especially if it's like the first sound, like there's nothing before it. So if I say like, perhaps, you might hear a little tiny bit more of breath, but it's not like perhaps, right? That would be breaking the stress. So it doesn't have to be super strictly controlled between the voiceless and the voiceless. As long as there's a bit more air that we hear clearly at the start of a stress syllable, we want that, right? You need that little bit of extra air. If it's in an unstressed syllable or the start of an unstressed syllable or whatever, if there's a little bit of air, it's fine. There should be at least maybe a little tiny bit of air. It's not completely airless necessarily, but you just don't want that air to really stand out or be noticeable. That's the big difference between them. So yeah, and all the things that I just explained apply to the k, g, p, b, especially the k and the p, as well as the t and the d. But of course, we know t and d get a little complicated, and they have some extra things that can happen. So okay. How much more open is the American posture over the Spanish posture? Is it a lot or just a little more? So I am not a native speaker of Spanish. I have not interviewed many Spanish speakers with this. I have experimented with things. I have gotten some feedback on with a native Spanish speaker, one of my old language exchange partners. Like a couple months ago, I wanted to test this with her just to see if some of my assumptions about Spanish were correct, if I was doing things correctly. And in general, it seemed like I was very much on the right track. So again, I can't speak for all Spanish speakers, because I'm definitely not a native. I know that there's, like in the Caribbean, there's some interesting things that happen in Spain, in Castilian Spanish. There's the th sound in certain places. Um, Obviously, Argentina has some very interesting things going on, which I love. I love the Argentinian accent, even though many Spanish speakers seem to hate it. So it could be, for example, maybe like the Argentinian accent is more open. I don't know. But speaking from my experience with Spanish, getting feedback from my Spanish speaking partner who's Mexican, native speaker of Mexican Spanish. That's the Spanish that I generally focused on, which my understanding is Mexican Spanish is kind of a very broad, sort of neutral sounding Spanish. I don't know if everybody would agree with that, but that's what I've learned and have been told. It does seem that Spanish is more closed. Okay. Now, how much? I mean, as I said, objectively, there's very little movement that we could do. Your mouth is not very big, but the little changes can make a big difference. So my understanding, my estimation approximately would be if American English is roughly about 50% open, right? So 100% would be, right? Like, I don't think any language, because you can't speak that way. Your jaw is just, right? So if you go about halfway open, about right here, okay, that's a pretty good, comfortable position for me to speak from. Okay, I'm not like, okay, and maybe it's not even 50%. I like to think it's about 50% because maybe if I go like here, I can still kind of talk. Maybe you can call this like 100. It's like way too much, but obviously this, I can't, that's 100 plus. I don't know. Either way, point is that it's going to be roughly around here. Okay. Not way over here, roughly around here. So it's a 40, 50%. Okay. Spanish would then be maybe between 20 and 30% open. So if we're looking at raw percentages, say if we go 50% at the most for American English and 20% at the lowest for Spanish, yeah, it's a 30% difference. It's not a whole lot, but in terms of how much space you have to form sounds in your mouth and how more clearly your voice is going to come out, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, and again, I don't know if me speaking with a more open posture, again, not the sounds themselves, but just like my general voice, my general sound. I don't know if to a native Spanish speaker that sounds a little weird in Spanish if my mouth is too open, but I do know that the opposite is true. That if you don't open your mouth enough in American English, you just don't have enough space to form everything properly. So it's actually a requirement in order to make the sounds well and clearly. Including like, I mean, the lazy forms you can maybe get away with, but even then, like it's going to be harder to understand you because your voice is going to sound kind of very small and mumbled because of that lack of space. So in some sense, it is a lot more, but don't overdo it. It's gonna, let me put it this way. It's gonna feel like more than it should be when you first do it. It's gonna feel a little uncomfortable. And I talked about that in the phase 1 lesson, how to find it, all right, where you sort of feel this open until you kind of feel it pushing out and then close up a little bit. And that's about roughly where you want to be, which, by the way, I did notice that there's actually 2 ways to open your jaw. There's one where you can use the muscles here, which is what I was building my guide off of to help find the openness. But apparently some students were actually opening their jaw like from here and kind of like doing it like this way instead of, because you can sort of hinge it here to open the jaw using muscles back here instead of opening it from your actual jaw muscles here. If you do it from here, you're not going to find it. So you need to make sure that you're feeling these muscles here and opening it that way. You can see my fingers. Okay, not. See, my fingers don't move there. So make sure you're doing it that way. But anyway, yeah. I didn't notice any difference in posture between Spanish accents, just the intonation for the most part. Well, intonation and a couple sounds. A couple sounds that might sort of shift around or go missing. But interesting. Yeah, I don't notice anything about intonation in Spanish. I never knew about intonation when I was teaching myself Spanish. And it's, I always just use English intonation, which probably sometimes sounds weird, but I think there's a lot of crossover. But there's definitely some, I've noticed since I've been trying to pay more attention to intonation in English, as well as a little bit in Spanish. I have noticed listening to Spanish speakers around me that sometimes I hear this intonation that like I wouldn't think to use in Spanish or I wouldn't use in English. And I'm like, that's interesting. That's new. So, okay. Anyway, back to where I was. Don't want to skip over anybody. Tony, I've watched your videos on YouTube. Do you have a website or something else where everything is organized in a logical order? You mentioned italki. I'm not familiar with that. Can you explain further? Okay. So, so for this first question here with Tony, playlists can be useful. Thank you, Abdullah. Yes. So I do have quite a few playlists. Some of them are more important than others. That's how I generally try to organize things. I currently do not have a website for English hacks. I really want to get one up. What I'm trying to do right now is build up the channel, the business in general, but especially the channel. Because right now, yes, I'm monetized, but I am not even making $100 a month. Last month was actually the best month. And that's partially because somebody became a top tier member at $50. So that's a big chunk of it. And YouTube takes quite a bit of that, but you know, that aside, still not at $100 a month, even with that. So between like the ad revenue, the YouTube memberships, I'm trying to grow the channel to a point where eventually I can hire an editor and I can hire an assistant. Also to get the website, because especially due to the direction the economy seems to be going and the fact that I'm behind on some things like my taxes that I need to save up for since I'm self-employed, I do not really have any money that I could just put into a website. That would be nice, but I don't have that money. So I'm trying to basically build up the channel, build that up in order to, like, once I say, hey, I have this little chunk of money I'm getting from the channel, I'm going to use this to put towards a website now so that I can actually get that going. Not quite there yet, but there is going to be a website. There are ways that I can sort of organize things on a website that I can't necessarily do here. Because I can also include, like, you know, my books that I have and this and that, whatever. So that'll be coming. That'll be coming. But for now, as Abdullah said, I have a whole like main pronunciation course playlist, which is technically done. It's pretty much done. Maybe I'll throw another video or two in there, but it's essentially done. And there's, I think, there's over 100 videos I know for sure in that. Quite a few of them are just extra practice lessons, so it might seem a lot worse than it actually is. I might remove the extra practice lessons from the main course because I have a playlist for that as well, and kind of just like bloats the count of that playlist. But and then I have other playlists for other courses or mini courses or whatever that I'm building or will build. So that's what you got for now, unfortunately, but there will be a website. Okay, italki. Not familiar with that. Can you explain shortly what's in there? Okay, so italki is one of the best, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a teacher there. I don't work for them. I work through them. It's a platform that you can work through. I'm not an employee of italki. They are not a channel sponsor, although I asked them about that, and apparently I'm too small. My channel is too small, so, you know, that seems unfair. But regardless, I discovered italki when I was trying to teach myself Spanish, and I realized I need to start speaking, even though I was terrified to do so. And I stumbled upon it. That's also how I started teaching English, because I never thought I'd be an English teacher. I have no interest in teaching English, really. But I'm very naturally interested in languages. And in order to become a teacher on italki for whatever language, all you have to do is be a native speaker and you can be an informal tutor. I later got my teaching certificate and became a professional teacher on there. But that's how I started teaching English, was through them. So you can find teachers on there, whether that's informal tutors or actual teachers that will give you like full lessons. You can also find language exchange partners for free, 100% free. The teachers aren't free, obviously, but you can find language exchange partners. Now, of course, language exchange partners are great because they're free, but you have to spend half the time in your language, half the time in their language, and vice versa. So it's really, really good if you don't have any money. That's basically what I did for Spanish. But obviously it takes more time. So there's a trade-off there. Italki also has, which I'm not super familiar with all their other features right now because I haven't used any of them as a learner in a long time. But if provided nothing has changed, they probably have some new stuff now, but provided nothing has changed from when I was actively using it as a user, not just a teacher. They also have like a notebook, which is like a community feature where you can like write things and like natives can give you corrections and feedback on it, like your grammar or your word choice, things like that, which you should be nice and reciprocate. Like, like you post something, people give you feedback, you go look for people who are learning your language, give them some feedback on what they wrote. You can also ask questions in the community forums, and native speakers will answer you all for free. None of this is paid. I'm pretty sure the only paid thing is the teachers. I think they do have some sort of like premium service that has some benefits to it, but you don't have to pay for that to use the site. So it's a really, really, really great site. I like it overall. Their programming sometimes is a little weak, but what they offer is fantastic. It's a very great platform. So if you want, I do have an affiliate link. It is an affiliate link in the description. If you sign up with that, I don't know what it is because they changed it at some point. I don't remember. But if you sign up with that and you take at least one class with anybody, doesn't have to be with me, then you get, I think we both get like $10 worth of Italki credits or something like that. Because it's pegged to the dollar. One Italki credit is $1. And that's their medium of exchange. So if you want to like take a class with a teacher, you would basically like, you don't have to pay in dollars, but you would say the teacher charges $20 an hour. So you would buy that much equivalent in Italki credits, whatever that would cost in the currency you're using, which would be 20 Italki credits since it's one Italki credit for $1. So you buy 20 Italki credits, sign up for the class. After the class is done, you confirm it. It goes into the teacher's wallet, and then the teachers get to withdraw their Italki credits twice a month into US dollars, into an account. So it's sort of like a middleman that handles that, so that you don't have to worry about people like not paying or this or that. And they have a really great dispute system. So if you find a bad teacher that I don't know, was like super rude to you or something, and you're just like, hey, like, oh, my money back. Like, I don't know, they'll step in and try to fix things for you. But Zebi is here. Welcome, Zebi. Let me know if you have questions. Anyway, so yeah, you can explore Italki. Sign up with the link if you want. You don't have to, and we can both get a little benefit from that. But okay. You also mentioned something that costs $50 a month. What is that, and what does that include? Yeah, so YouTube, if you there should be a button right under this video, a blue button that says join. If you click that button, I don't know if you're watching it on mobile. I think you should still have it. It might be a little different on mobile than a desktop, but if you click that button, you will see some membership tiers. So this is YouTube memberships. For $2 a month, you get early access to new videos before anybody else, and you get one of my ebooks for free. You just have to email me and pick one of the books, and I will send it to you, the ebook, for free. That's $2 a month, YouTube supporter. For $10 a month, your name will be listed in the description of every video, as long as this is an active level that you're paying for. And you also get a link to download all of my current ebooks for free. Super English Hacker is $30. So for $30 a month, you get all of that, plus pronunciation and or grammar feedback, where you can send me, like say 2 or 3 short audio clips every month, where I'll give you pronunciation or grammar feedback on that. And your name will also be listed at the end of every video, in the actual video itself, not just the description. And then for $50, you get all of that, plus a 1-hour video call once per month with me directly. So a one-on-one hour where we can talk about anything you want. It could be pronunciation work, I don't care. But that comes with the $50 thing. So now it's a lot cheaper to actually just take my classes, but my classes aren't always open, and they won't always be open forever. But that's what you also, as I said, you get all the other perks as well, like your name listed and the ebooks and blah, 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 that you don't get from taking my classes. So that's part of why it's $50. But yeah, you don't have to sign up for that if you don't want, but it is there if you're interested and curious. And it's a way to not only get some direct guidance from me, but also to support the channel. So Zebby, I like your name. Yeah, Zebby is kind of a cool name. Yeah, I like that. Shok. I still don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry. Shok. I'm gonna say Shok. Welcome. Well, you shouldn't say thanks because it's actually a bad word in Arabic. Huh. Good to know. But as long as we're speaking English, I think we're fine. Interesting. Is there any? That's so random. Like, okay. Is there any one pivot point by which we can hold on to and speak or sound at least 80% American? Yes, there is actually. Speech is controlled by tongue or pharynx. Mouth posture. Go check out my mouth posture classes. Lessons. Mouth posture. I have a course right now that is still in development. That I think if my classes are open right now, you can actually sign up for. It is experimental. It's in development. Keep that in mind. But results are very good so far. You can start by just typing in like English Hacks Mouth Posture. I have an introduction lesson, which kind of introduces the concept and talks a bit about the quality of sounds, like how there's a schwa sound in Russian, French, German, even like Scottish English, British English, American English, but they all don't sound exactly the same, even though they're all the schwa and they all use the same IPA symbol. And my theory is that that's largely, if not completely, because of the mouth posture, because British English has a different mouth posture than American English. So you can watch the introductory lesson to kind of get the basic idea. It's a little long, but then I have the phase 0 lesson, which regardless of if you do mouth posture or not, it's the single most important pronunciation lesson that you could ever do, period. I cannot exaggerate or overstate how important the phase 0 lesson is to you being able to improve your pronunciation, regardless of what kind of approach you take, because all it does, it teaches you how to get better control of your vocal tract, the throat, the tongue, the front of the tongue, middle of the tongue, back of the tongue. Super important. Then there's phase 1, which starts to actually build the core posture of American English, which is the center of gravity. We talk a little bit about the breath, a little bit about the lips, a lot about the tongue and getting that sound, also getting the jaw a bit more open. These are all important pieces. But is there any one pivot point? Yes. Particularly in American English, that is the sound okay. Now that is a schwa sound. In American English, the reality of the schwa sound is that there's what I like to call the true schwa. It's a reduced little sound that linguistically is the actual technical definition of schwa. Then there is the upside down V IPA symbol, which is the sound like in cut. So something kind of cut. Okay. Hard for me to isolate that because Americans perceive this as like one sound. But it does still exist in our speech, which is going to go in part of my response video to Geoff Lindsay. But anyway, that aside, I have a whole lesson on this. It's called the range of the schwa. If you type in like range of schwa English hacks, you'll find it. Or the truth about the schwa. That's what I call it. The truth about the schwa. The truth about the schwa. Okay. Look that lesson up and you can learn more about all the specific details with that. But that aside, in the middle of that is what I like to call sort of a clear, enunciated schwa, which would be so it's not like in cut. It's not that little reduced, like say in about, or if we reduce to but it's right in the middle. It's the thinking sound, the general, most common thinking sound in American English. I don't know. Very open, right? The jaw is pretty open. The throat doesn't have a lot of resistance. It's generally held pretty open, pretty relaxed. We're down a bit, back a bit in the middle here. Okay. Everything, every single sound that you make in American English will be based around that. Please talk about resonance. I can make a little bit about resonance. Resonance is not very important, but I'll get there in a second. So it threw me off track. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. And I won't go into all the details here, but many languages seem to have the tongue slightly pushed forward. So even if you sort of have like the right shape and you're like in the middle, if your tongue is pushed forward, you're going to get something like It's a very common sound that many people taking the mouth posture course make when they're trying to make a schwa sound. It's because the back of the tongue is pushed forward. And we don't do that in American English. It's not, which to you, it's going to feel relaxed. It's not going to feel like it's pushed forward, but it is. And the more that you, especially if you go through phase 0 and you really start focusing on like how things feel and how things sound as you manipulate different parts of your vocal tract, you're going to start to notice, oh yeah, my tongue is slightly pushed forward. Now that may not be true for all languages because it's not true in American English. So maybe you don't have that problem, but almost everybody I've worked with, I think probably everybody I've worked with, German speaker, French speaker, Russian speakers, Ukrainian speakers, a couple Mandarin speakers, Spanish speakers, Portuguese speakers, all of you guys have this tongue pushed slightly forward. I don't know why. American English seems to be the weird one where we don't do that. But anyway, got to get those pieces in place. Now, once you do that, okay, so I like to call this the center of gravity, or sometimes central tension. So COG, center of gravity, CT, central tension. Now it's not tense. You're not trying to tense the middle. I need to sort of relabel that because of a reason. We don't have to care about that right now. But the main point is that like as I'm speaking to you now, if I don't pay attention to it, I don't notice it at all. Okay. But as I'm speaking to you, if I try to feel, okay, is there a central point in my mouth that seems to remain relatively unchanged, or that seems to have some sort of like there's something there no matter what sound I'm making or no matter what sound I'm going to, and it feels like it's right in the middle of my tongue. It doesn't even matter if I'm doing which the tongue kind of comes up. It's also a middle tongue sound. I can still feel it here. It's always there. If I do t, it's there. If I do s, it's there. If I do p, it just kind of sits there because puzz with the lips. If I do w, which is one of the keys to what, the inside of the mouth needs to be very open. If you have the right posture, it also helps a lot. And then it's the lips that are very closed. But my mouth, this is W. Except the lips. Ooh. Okay. That's why a lot of you don't have a good W sound because you're trying to do W like this. W, w, w. It's not going to work. You need more space. Anyway, point is, there is this very subtle little feeling that I have here, almost like there's just a little ball sort of sitting in the middle of my tongue. And if I go, say, into a T or into an E, or something that's in front of it, it might shift forward a little bit, but it stays in the middle of the tongue. If I go into, say, ah, if I go into k, which are more on the back of the tongue, it'll maybe shift back a little bit, but it stays in the middle of the tongue. And it's always there. It's like a door hinge, right? It's like the tongue is the door, and it's always kind of like opening and closing and moving around, but it more or less goes around this hinge, right? That is the mouth posture of American English. Now, I can't speak for all natives necessarily. There is more than one neutral accent. I do think that the main reason why an American sounds neutral is because we probably share at least 99% the mouth posture. It's not just the sounds, because like even like there are people who have the cot merger, people who don't have the cot merger. There are people who say "er." There are people who, like me, who say "er." It's just "er" is a straight vowel, et cetera, et cetera. And yet these things are generally so small that they don't really give you an accent that could identify you from a particular place. Like if I start talking more like this, you probably say, "Well, he's from the South," right? Or maybe if I'm a bit more like this, you can probably tell I'm more from the north, maybe in Minnesota or North Dakota. Okay, so definitely, like if I hear anybody speaking like that, I'm gonna know where they're from. Period. Like where somebody listens to me speak, maybe I don't sound exactly like they do, but I would be very surprised if any native could say, "Oh, you're from this state," or "You're from this part of the country." Maybe Western, but Western American is still very, very neutral overall. It's still part of general American English. So, and the West is a very big part of the country. It's like literally half the country. Anyway, so it could be maybe, say, people who speak from, they're from, what is it, the North Central Midland or whatever, the supposed one neutral accent that doesn't actually exist. People who speak with that accent, maybe it feels a little bit different in their mouth. I don't know. But the point is that I am a neutral sounding, natural sounding native speaker. And so if you do it the way I do it, you're also going to sound very neutral and natural. Now, is speech controlled by the tongue or the pharynx? Your throat is involved in speech. It depends on your native language. If you have a native language that is more throaty, where you tend to engage the throat a bit more, or the throat is kind of held in a little bit of a tighter position. So like if you speak German, if you speak probably Arabic, Hebrew, these types of languages, you're going to have to adjust some stuff in here. But that is just one factor. 90% is in the tongue. The lips are involved, the jaw is involved, the breath is involved, the throat is involved, and different parts of the throat. It's all part of it. But 90% of your pronunciation, 90% of your accent is in the tongue. It's in the tongue. Okay. Now, when we talk about resonance, resonance before is something that I kind of dismissed. At the end of the day, my opinion hasn't changed too much, but I through experience working with some people in the mouth posture course, I have noticed that it is something that could need addressing depending on the individual. So if I try to do, say, for example, ah, but let's say, which is, on the back of my tongue, the mouth is pretty open. We're back here, ah, ah, ah. Now, what happens if I try to say that exact sound, but I try to make it sound like it's coming from the front of my mouth? Ah, 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 ah. Okay, it probably sounds, to you, it might sound exactly the same. To me, it sounds almost exactly the same. It's really hard to shift the resonance a bit, depending on the sound. But see, if that was your resonance, you'd probably sound like nobody would probably notice for the most part for that particular sound. If you're doing everything right for, say, the posture and the sound within American English, the resonance will take care of itself. If your resonance is off, if you're trying to say a sound and let's say you hear a native say it and it sounds like it's coming from a different part of the mouth than when you say it, that means that you're, as far as the pronunciation of American English, you're doing something wrong. Okay, maybe it's the way you're holding something. Maybe it's there's certain muscles that are maybe tense that shouldn't be tense, that are sort of shifting where it sounds like the sound's coming from, and you need to relax those muscles. So resonance can play a part, but if you do everything correctly, the resonance will take care of itself. Resonance, in my opinion, is largely just a diagnostic tool if it's a problem, because many people that I work with, resonance is not even a problem. At least not one that's significant enough to stand out. And I generally have pretty good ears. So you might have to worry about it. You might not. It might just affect certain sounds. But I would focus mostly on getting the throat in sort of the right posture, getting the tongue in the right posture, opening things up a lot, getting the jaw open. American English is very, very open. That's the one key thing. You want to sound open. You want to sound clear. If you don't have that, you have nothing. Like there's no point in working on anything else. So anyway, I have lessons all about that. I'm going to be making more lessons. As I said, the course is still in development. I'm still making it, so I haven't made more lessons yet, but I do have the first few lessons on that you can watch. What was I going to say? Yeah. Okay. Fernando, what about British speakers? Do they have the tongue pushed forward when making the schwa? Well, I can't speak for British speakers because I'm not a British speaker. It does seem, based off of if I listen to their schwa and based off of some information that I know about British English, it does seem within RP that I know for sure that their mouth is not quite as open. Just a little bit. I think it's similar. Like if you compare, say, Spanish and British English is probably more open. But the tongue being pushed forward, I think that also is happening, especially when they do that sort of schwa sound to like replace the R at the end. Like if they say wata, right? Like if I do that just with my normal American posture, wata, 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 ta, 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 wata, ta, wata, wata. If you, and I don't know, again, I'm not British, but if you have a British person listen to that, they're probably going to say that sounds a little bit weird. Maybe even that sounds like an American accent. I don't know. I haven't actually talked to a British person about this. So maybe if, one joins the conversation and can give me some feedback, we could do that. Maybe I'll have a collaboration with somebody who's a British speaker at some point. I don't know. But when I hear them doing that sound, I mean, it sounds like a schwa. Like that's the thing. Like in regardless of the language, except maybe French, because French also likes to use the lips a lot in their schwa. But even there in French, or like in Scottish, which kind of is maybe a little bit farther back with their schwa, you could tell it's the same sound, right? It sounds like the same sound, but the quality is different. It doesn't, like if you use the schwa in Scottish English, you use the schwa in British English, you use the schwa in Russian, it doesn't sound American. Doesn't sound, there's something about it, and it has to be the posture. Part of it could be if the mouth is more closed, maybe there's just not enough space in the mouth to hear the sound the way that it should normally come out. And or if that tongue is pushed forward, obviously that's going to shift the posture out of place from American English. So yeah, that's my current understanding and view of it. I do think their tongue is pushed forward, but I could be wrong. Okay, I think we're running out of time here. Anything else today, guys? I don't think I missed anything. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm going to do my best to make. Oh, cool. Okay, I'm going to do my best to make make more videos. I'm really struggling with. I'm not going to go into details, but I will tell you guys, those of you that are here, I'm really struggling with some things in my mind. Not anything to worry about, but it's making it very difficult to focus on content. But I really want to make content, and it's just like this all the time. I'm like, make content, don't make content, because I'm also way behind. So I'm working on it. If I could just get myself to record a bunch of videos, which I plan to do over today and tomorrow, say like 5 to 10 videos, then I just have to sit in the editor, which is not as hard, but takes time. So yeah, things are coming. Okay, so nobody's saying anything, so I'm gonna go. So thank you guys for watching another or participating in another live stream, and hopefully the channel will have a very productive week. And hopefully you all have a very good week as well. And if you're here next time, I'll see you next time. If not, then fine, don't come back. Just kidding. Okay, bye. You're welcome.